All right. The chair will bring to order the Monday, February 4th, 2019 Single Family Design Board. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the board on any item not on today's agenda? Seeing no one come forward, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for actions. Let's hold off just for a moment for our roll call, but let's move to approval of our minutes for the Single Family Design Board meeting of Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay, there is a first and second. Let's go through each of the items to make sure there's no questions or comments. Let's look at item number 1, 11 Dia Alicia. Item number 2, 1199 Harbor Hills Drive. Item number 3, 2736 El Prado Road. Item number 4, 855 Miramonte Drive. Item number 5, 365 El Cielito Road. Item number 6, 1409 Shoreline Drive. Item number 7, 1049 Alameda Padre Serra. Item number 8, 1211 Del Mar Avenue. Hearing no further comment to the motion on the floor, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, so carried. Let's go to a consent calendar for January 28th, Monday. Mr. Ng.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Consent calendar minutes for January 28th are as follows. Item A, 1031 Mission Ridge Road. This project received final approval as submitted. Item B, 1206 Harbor Hills Drive. This project received final approval as submitted. Item C, 2030 Anacapa Street. This project was continued 1 week with comments as noted. Item D, 917 Alphonse Street. This project was continued indefinitely with comments as noted. Item E, 945 Alita Lane. This project received project design approval and was continued with 1 week to consent with comments as noted. And item F, 1640 Calle Canyon. This project received project design approval and final approval with comments as noted. Items A through F were reviewed by Chair Sweeney and Board Member James.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Do we have a second? Further discussion to the motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, so carried. Let's go to this morning's consent calendar, February 4th. Mr. Ng.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Consent calendar minutes for February 4th are as follows. Item A, 945 Alita Lane. This project received final approval as submitted. And item B, 1114 Bel Air Drive. This project received project design approval and was continued indefinitely to consent with comments as noted. Okay. Items A and B were reviewed by Chair Sweeney and Board Member James.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further questions to the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay. Before we go to announcements, we have a person sitting at the end of the table. She might want to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, Chair Sweeney, board members. I'm Tava Ostringer. I'm an assistant city attorney. I've been staffing HLC and ABR. I don't quite have the time to staff single-family design right now, but if you need me, you just have to ask, and I'll come in for certain items. And I'll be addressing you later on item number 2.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Welcome. David, announcements from your side.
Yeah, so I just want to mention that on today's agenda, item number 3, 1850 East Las Tunas Road, that project has been postponed at the applicant's request, so we will not be hearing that. At the last hearing, we also received an appeal for the denial that this board issued for the project at 1199 Harbor Hills Drive. That was a project that involved alterations to the front. It received zoning modification, but this board had objections to the enlargement of the deck, the upper level deck, within the 15 feet deck guideline that we have in our single family residence guidelines. And lastly, Member Richards will be absent from today's meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Kathleen, can we have a roll call, please?
Okay, here we go. Chair Sweeney.
Here.
Vice Chair Miller.
Here.
Board Member Farrell.
Here.
Board Member James.
Here.
Board Member Motisha.
Here.
Board Member Ziegler.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Just up front, Brian Miller and myself will be stepping down on the last item. We represent that client. We're each individual practitioners. So I'm assuming we'll have a quorum. 4 of you will be staying through the last item? Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone else?
Last item. All right.
It's item number 5, or 4, excuse me, 837 Arboleda Road.
Okay.
Scheduled for 5:10. We'll see if we can get, because the third item is postponed, we should be able to move that to 4:55, 15 minutes
You're
ahead.
here, so we're here.
Okay, and then subcommittees. Who's reporting on our subcommittee?
Well, I just want to say the 3 of us met for our Standing Metal Seam Roof Subcommittee, and we're going to have a report by next time we meet in 2 weeks.
Okay,
We're not going to do it today.
Yeah, no, sorry, yeah,
they got more work they have to do, and that's okay.
sorry about that.
That's right.
I'm going to
easy.
submit to the committee, because I was doing research on another subject, a couple of more standing seam, not standing seam, but metal roofs
Okay.
for your perusal. They're not in Santa Barbara, they're elsewhere, but how people are using them. Okay.
And I have-
Yes.
I just have a question for David regarding the appeal. Has there been a date set, or is that to?
There has not been a date set yet.
Okay, all right.
So it's usually, 30-plus days out before they're able to schedule them?
It's roughly 30 days, I believe, when that's the appeal date is set.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, any other announcements? Anything else from subcommittees? Hearing none, we can go ahead and start with our first item, 2215 White Avenue. Welcome,
Thank you.
and if you introduce yourselves for the record, please.
I am Jose Luis Esparza. I'm the architect
Okay.
for the project.
Thank you. David, I'm reading, is this a new item? Do I need to read this into the record?
Yes, this is a new item.
Okay, so this is a new item, and I'll just read into the record the project description. This is for 2215 White Avenue. It's a one-time pre-application concept review to replace an existing composition single roof with a new standing seam metal roof on an existing 2,362 square foot, 2-story single residential unit with an attached 689 square foot single garage and detached 376 accessory building in the rear yard. This is here for comments only. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. So if you could share with us what you're wanting to do.
Oh, and Mr. Chair, if I can
Yes,
just
I'm
interrupt
sorry.
real quick. So if you notice in the plans, this project involves or has some additions proposed in it that are not ready for review. So we are only reviewing the standing seam metal roof at today's hearing.
Okay? Right. Thank you. So if you could share with us.
Okay,
What's
if we
your
can look at
proposal?
the photographs. Just wanted to point out the project. So right now it's a 2-story. It looks like a plywood T111 exterior siding house. Very dark. Stands out quite a bit from the neighbors and in the neighborhood. Adjacent to our project on the east side, we have a house that has been remodeled or rebuilt that is more contemporary. This is the existing front of the house, and at a future day we'll propose a new entry, because right now the entry is like right, smack in the front of the house. The stairs up to it are very funky. This is the garage and the two-story house adjacent to it. Some shot of the side of the house, the west side. Here's a better shot of our neighbor to the west, so flat roofs.
East side.
That's the west side of the house. This neighbor is to the east. The west side neighbor is a one-story house. There's a hedge so you only see the top of the roof.
Oh, yes, okay.
And here's a picture of a standing metal seam roof, which is on Cliff Drive, approximately there. A couple of different angles, and then there's a standing seam metal roof that's on Flora Vista, somewhere about here. And so in the neighborhood, I could only find two, not going beyond what I thought was the neighborhood.
I found another one.
Huh?
I found another one.
Oh,
I don't visualize it right now.
okay.
Okay.
So there's already a precedent for metal roofs on homes. So here's our site plan, and here's the workshop, the detached workshop. The two-story element is over this area right here, with a one-story garage and one-story back area and one-story workshop. Floor plan.
Now, this is all existing, right?
All existing except for what we were proposing to do a front addition, this area here. So right now, there's that bay
You can
with the front
point
door.
here.
Sorry. Right now, this is an existing bay,
Yeah.
and we were proposing to do a entry addition with the stairs going up the side and in, so that when you come into the house, you don't come in and it's like straight shot through.
I see.
So here's the house with the sandy metal roof. Of course, this element isn't here. So metal roof over the garage or the main residence back. And the colors that we're proposing. Oh, and we're going to do a new garage door. Right now, the existing garage door is not in good shape, so I'm going to do a more modern door. So here's the roof colors that we're proposing. It's a burnt slate metal roof, standing seam metal roof. The trim will be white. The plaster will be also white, smooth trowel. And the existing doors and windows are this chocolate color. So it almost goes with the windows and doors go with the roof.
Removing all, go ahead.
No, all the doors and windows are existing.
We come to questions here in a second.
Sorry.
Okay. All
Sorry.
right. So that's your presentation.
Yes.
Okay, and we're here to look at the standing seam roof. Okay, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? David, did we get any written correspondence?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you. The chair will then see no one come forward. The chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Mr. Motisha, you have a question?
You're taking off all this T111 and plastering the whole house.
We're actually going to nail the 111 and put the plaster
over
right
top.
over that. The way that the windows are installed on the house is they have a trim. If we can go back to one of the photos, it has
so
a
we made that
1x
trim.
trim, so they're already proud of the siding, the T111.
Oh, yes.
See, yeah. See, this trim hides the, the reveal, what the window stands out. And it looks like they were done, and some of the paper was even left a little bit wide as preparation to plaster over the house.
Okay. Other questions?
I have one.
Yes, Jonathan.
Perhaps I misunderstood. You're not talking about putting white trim on the standing metal seam roof, are you? Maybe I'm asking it the wrong way. Where is that white trim going to be applied?
Actually, the white trim would be the fascia. I know that it looks better to have a dark trim with the dark gutters and then do the white downspouts. But the owner wants to do the white fascia. And of course, there won't be any trim around the windows because the plaster will roll into the windows.
Okay. Other questions? Let's see, I just wanted to verify, there's a big redwood tree that appears to be on the property in the front yard?
Yes.
Is that the case?
Yes.
Nothing's happening to that, right?
No.
And currently, the house has no gutters. You're indicating,
Correct.
it's not shown on your elevations, but you're indicating on this note that you are going to do gutters?
Yes.
So is that, maybe we can go back to the,
Yeah. I haven't drawn in the.
so the gutters are going to go on this and this?
Yes. In elevation, I put the line for the gutters, but I didn't put the downspouts.
Downspouts are,
Yeah.
okay. And then, so I'm assuming you're proposing a white gutter to match the white fascia board, and then the downspout
Will also be white.
will be white also, okay. And then I had a question about the bay window, but you've answered that. Siding. Okay, and the other question I had in going down that little street, is there any parking restrictions on that street? Looked like people were parking on both sides. There's no sidewalks or.
Yeah,
curbs or
I didn't see any parking restrictions. I believe there's a sign that you can't park certain days of the week for street sweeping, but other than that, I haven't seen any parking restrictions.
And David, there's no noticing requirement of the yellow sign requirement for this project?
No, not for this project.
Okay. Have your clients talked to your neighbors about what they're planning to do? Yeah?
They talked to the neighbor next door. Unfortunately, that house is up for sale.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if they didn't mention having talked to any of the other adjacent neighbors.
And essentially, you're here to try to get a read from us of whether or not we would accept the standing seam metal roof before you proceed to do the rest of your design work.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you have, some of these standing seam metals roofs, some of these panels are really wide, some of them are more narrow, some of them have these wide pieces that go across. Do you have an idea of what this is?
On the elevations, I show ones that are 12 inches apart,
Okay.
so that you don't have that wide.
Do you have a roof plan?
Yes.
Oh, that's here, right?
That's a partial. Here's the full roof plan.
Okay, and are these new skylights or existing?
Existing.
Existing. Right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's go to comments. The applicant's wishing to get a read, an informal read from the board as to whether or not we would accept a standing seam metal roof in this neighborhood.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I think due to the texture of the neighborhood, I think a standing metal seam roof at 12 inches on center, just making sure it's not a glaring surface is appropriate. The only question I have is, on my comment is, you're kind of playing off the colors of the house next door. This is interesting. It's got a charcoal gray and then a white. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how, is he kind of playing off that, or have you kind of seen how they would look next to each other? Or?
Actually, he did take that into consideration, but he did have photos of other houses. I'm not sure where they're located, but where
Because I'd like to
it had that combination.
kind of like to see how he's at this. In my mind, it's hard for me to see a white trim with a. And the other thing, I'm kind of a warning for T111 because the stuff rots really badly. So if you're going to cover it with plaster, make very sure that it's waterproof, because I live in a unit where we had to replace every bit of it because it was just falling apart.
No, we do need to have it inspected and replace whatever panels, and we do the Tyvek or the double paper over that, and wire.
Yeah, just be
before
careful.
doing that.
So you'll try to use some of that as a shear.
Yes,
shear element.
just so that we're not altering the structure of the existing house as well.
Right?
My comments.
Other comments?
I agree with Brian. I think the neighborhood is eclectic enough. I mean, every house is different, and every roof in the house in the neighborhood is different. There are lots of flat roofs. There's asphalt shingles. There's tile roofs. Putting a standing seam roof on that house would not change. It would probably do something for the neighborhood. Change it a little bit, but the only thing I have is I agree with Brian that it should be non-reflective. Other than that, I'm fine with it. I would support it for a standing seam roof.
Other comments?
Yes, I'll comment.
Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree also, the neighborhood is not characterized by any one particular genre, and so I would be okay with approving the standing seam metal. However, I do feel the contrast of the black roof and the white fascia, whatever it is a bit extreme. And a bid for you to take the AstroTurf out.
Oh. It's a landscape issue.
I know that's it's not relevant, but I can't help it.
Well, it's not, it may be relevant when they come back for
May I comment?
there. But let's hold off, let's not get into
Other people comments
cross-discussion. Let me
first,
get
yeah,
other comments.
Hold your thoughts.
I have a comment. You cited a proposed change in the garage door. How official is that? Is that something we look at today?
Not today. We're going to look at it later.
Yeah, it's just what your feelings are on that.
Well,
door.
I'm anticipating an issue down the road, so that's why I brought it up. I think maybe we should look at it to save him some time.
And on what sheet is that on?
I think it's I like it. I think it's unique with the horizontal windows just on one end.
Yeah, I have a neighbor with one like that, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I do have one more comment, sorry.
Yes,
And
go ahead.
I'd like to hear from my fellow architects. The front entry, the way the roof kind of goes over, maybe it's perfectly fine based on the style of the house, but see how he's adding the roof, and I know you're doing that to cover the front door, but how it stops halfway here? But maybe that's perfectly in style with that kind of house. I don't know.
And I mean, we did that to provide cover
Right.
for somebody standing there, and an entry without actually putting down posts.
I think it enhances the house because the house as it is right now, it's a two-story tall element, and all of a sudden you've added something in the front that breaks it down.
Okay.
And I thought about that too, why this? But I don't, architecturally and aesthetically, I think,
It's not like her talk to, yeah.
I think the reason the roofs are different heights is because the garage is a different height at the floor level.
Yes.
And obviously, and to bring that over, you would maybe emphasize the fact that the roofs are,
Yes,
doesn't bother me.
I got it.
Any other comments? Go back to the AstroTurf issue. One of the things, yes, we'll probably be looking at when you come back is you are moving out into that front yard with this addition. So we typically are going to want to see how you're going to deal with the landscaping around where that addition is at the minimum. So we'll want to look at that. The other thing that I was puzzled about is the way this is drawn. It looks like the garage door is being moved over because this is in the center of this element. So it's just, it's just a question. And also, the roof, the way you've drawn it, the way it shows in the photograph, looks like it's coming across here unless that whole second floor is moving forward. So maybe just something to check as you do your drawings. My only comment is I agree with my colleagues that in this particular neighborhood, and I'd want to make sure we're going to need to give a motion because he's asking for a general direction. We're not giving it a formal approval, but we probably need to define the neighborhood. The applicant attempted to do that. If we agree with that definition, that's fine, but we should put that into the motion. And then my only other comment is, part of the challenge of these standing seam roofs being non-reflective is that even the dark colors are reflective and shine, in my opinion. And having gone out and looked at several of those dark colors, they can be problematic depending on where they are. I agree with my colleagues. I think in this neighborhood it's not an issue, but just looking at the final color rendering is going to be important. And then the last comment is that I don't particularly mind your clients wanting us to make everything else white, except if you buy white gutters, because you can buy them that way, what turns out is that white doesn't quite match the white that's on the fascia, that doesn't quite match the white that's in the stucco, and it may look a little weird to get all these whites to work together. I think that's maybe what bothers some folks. So you might want to look at that. Are you going to buy the gutters galvanized and paint them, or are you going to buy copper gutter? What are you doing with your gutters? And then, part of our problem here is trying to look at colors under these lights. This is not the place to be looking at exterior colors because of these lights we have in this room. But white is really tricky, so that would be my only caution about wanting to do everything in white.
These elevations here are really, they're really noticeable from the street. I would recommend it when you bring in color rendering, or color, fascias, or not, but they show us the white with the dark roof.
Okay.
See what,
And
tell us what it
also,
looks like.
I'm sure as a question's going to come up when you do come back about the fencing, because I noticed where is it? There's a gate that's trimmed out in the current rendering of the house. I don't know where that little drawing went. There's a gate to the garage side and a fence that comes down. You can see it a little bit in this photograph. Is that going to stay? Is it going to change? Is it going to get painted? Whatever. That'll be kind of, there it is. Kind of part of the things we'll look at when you come back.
Do we have a scale here?
No.
I think, I'm just guessing, but I would say that's drawn too long.
Yeah, some's not quite right there. But anyway, he'll verify.
6 feet, 8 feet too long, the whole garage.
Yeah. Anyway, he can get that corrected when he comes back. Okay, so with that discussion, does anyone have other comments? If not, then the chair would look for a motion that solidifies the board's general opinion on the acceptability of a standing seam roof. Any other notes you want to make to that motion? And I would also suggest that if the Maker of the motion is making one where the standing seam roof is going to be acceptable, that you define the neighborhood, and for a little guidance, you can certainly look at the vicinity map. It's on the front of the application. Anybody able to make a motion?
Yeah, okay, I
Okay.
can make that motion. So we'd like to give your project positive comments for your standing seam metal roof. I think it would be beneficial to restudy your color choices as far as your gutter and trims in contrasting with the color of the metal seam roof. Also, I comment to really study a non-glare as much as possible for this standing seam metal roof. And we'd like to define this eclectic neighborhood of Cliff Drive, Fellowship Road, and White Avenue. And this will come back to the full board.
Okay. Do I have a second to that motion?
I second
Okay. Is
With the
there-
maker of the motion, I'd like to add that we appreciated the standing metal seam being at 12 inches on center and to support that.
Please add that in,
Okay.
the 12-inch.
Is that acceptable to the seconder? Who seconded?
I did.
Is that acceptable?
I have, yeah, I'll second it.
Okay.
I accept it.
Okay. So that amendment is acceptable?
But I have a comment.
Okay. All right. Okay, before we vote, another comment to the
Yes,
motion.
there are a few things in the past that we've commented on standing seam architecturally, aesthetically, which are not in our guidelines. And one of them is, and we've done it a lot, kind of making a comment on whether the seams are 18 inches apart or 12 inches apart.
Yeah.
We basically cannot make that comment because it is not in our guidelines to decide whether we like it or we don't like it. We are basing our thing on a standing seam roof, and
I don't think so.
you don't think so?
No, we can make a preference, because that has to do with the aesthetics, and our job is to look at the general aesthetics, even if it's not specifically.
Okay.
The guidelines were put together to address issues that the boards, all the review boards have experienced over time, and that the staff. And one of the challenges that we're dealing with right now, that's why we have a subcommittee on the standing seam roof and the glass, because those aren't in our guidelines. And I think the reason we have that subcommittee in play is we're trying to look at, is there a way that we can get better guidance? What may come out of that committee, might come out of that committee, is some recommendation that we move forward to add to, change, or supplement the current set of guidelines. The guidelines are exactly that. They're guidelines. They're not a zoning code. That's why we have a city attorney sitting here, because they go by the code. The guidelines are our discretionary decision-making process. If this board over a period of time has issues about, standing seam dimensions or whatever, and we strongly believe that that's an issue that we need to provide guidance to whoever is sitting on this board, then we may want to make a suggestion that the guidelines be changed or added to. And so I think your point is well made, but it may be part of your report when it comes back of saying the board shouldn't be dictating the dimensions, or the board should be dictating dimensions, or they have the ability to do that, whatever. And then we could move to a motion to go to staff to say, let's explore how we alter our guidelines and update them.
Well, and also, in addition, that's why there's 7 members on the board. One can suggest it, and the others could,
Right. But ultimately, if there's general agreement that there ought to be a guideline for certain things that aren't currently in our guidelines, then we need to study that, make a recommendation to staff to see if we can supplement the guidelines and update them. The guidelines can be reissued with additional information.
And I'd have to say, based on my architectural experience, that the 12 inches on center looks more residential as opposed to the 16, which looks more commercial or industrial. So I think the 12-inch is more appropriate.
But right now, the motion says 12 inches. So your
I
comments
agree
are
with the
duly
second.
noted. Okay, and
I'll
you agree
agree
with the
with the
second.
second.
All right. So there are
I'll
further.
hold off my comments till we make our presentation in 2 weeks.
All right.
I have a further comment. if I
Yes.
might. Since the other subject that's been controversial for the subcommittee is garage doors, and he's in here to try to get some progress before you go with your official plans, do you think the motion should include some mention that the garage door looks acceptable to the committee?
Is that an amendment you're suggesting to the
Yeah,
maker
that
of the
would be
motion?
an amendment,
The
right?
maker of the motion. Does the maker of the motion accept that?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with it.
All right, so that's part of the motion then, okay? All right, any further discussion to the motion on the floor? Now officially, we're supposed to act on each one of those amendments, but we don't typically do that. But we now understand, everyone understand what the motion is? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, abstentions, so carried. Okay, so we'll see you back here when you're ready. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to item number 2. This is 2082 Los Canaos Road. This is here for a second concept review, comments only. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Project requires an environmental assessment. Project was last reviewed on October 1st, 2018.
Chair Sweeney, if I
Yes.
may address the board before the applicant gives their presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Let me have them introduce themselves for the record, and then I'll have you proceed, and we can get some drawings in front of us. And do we have comments from the last time, I guess? Maybe?
Yes.
Okay, so, okay. If you could just introduce yourselves for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Larry Borello, and I'm the project architect.
And Kevin Teixeira, the co-owner.
Thank you. Okay, so before I have you present, we have our city attorney here, and she's going to share with us some information. And David, if you have information also.
Thank you, Chair Sweeney, board members. I understand that there has been some questions regarding how the board addresses projects that are coming through that are enforcement cases with the city. Generally, I can imagine it's for unpermitted work that's been done. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to talk to the board about how you should be looking at these projects. The enforcement cases are handled at a staff level. Occasionally, some of them actually are forwarded to the city attorney's office, where we do file lawsuits against the property owners. Our purpose in the lawsuits is to gain compliance with the code, to get the property owner to follow the process. And in many of these cases, the process includes coming before the design boards for your approval. If the work has already been done and we're addressing as-built construction work that's facade related, the board doesn't consider the enforcement action. It looks at the project as if it were brand new. So you'll be looking at the project to decide if the proposed design, as in this case, when it would be built, is acceptable to the board. If it's not acceptable to the board, then you would deny the project. If it is acceptable to the board, then you just accept it as you would had it not been constructed. So I know there was some concern on some projects where they're in a lawsuit, but if there is a lawsuit, we know about it when it's coming to you, and we'd stop it if we had any concerns. So you can go ahead and address your projects as you would if they didn't have an enforcement case. The only problem is that it's on the applicant if they've done the work and the board can't accept it.
Thank you. Did anyone have questions?
Yeah, so this is,
Brian.
yeah, has this already been built?
I think this is Mr. Ng could probably address it, or the applicant, better than I could. This, I think, is grading related, but because it was coming, it had the ENF, and I know that other projects have come forward. I just was taking this opportunity.
If I may, I'm going to ask you some questions. So I think I understand what you said. If we have, sometimes there's zoning enforcements, there's a grading enforcement, et cetera. Many of those don't generate aesthetic issues. Many of them are technical issues about a setback movement or some other thing. Typical, if they do address aesthetics, the applicant may be here for asking for a read on a potential modification before they go to the staff hearing officer, which we've typically kind of walked through. But we had one case where we had a applicant in front of us where the board said we're not in agreement with the landscape portion of the project. we'd like you to prepare a landscape plan and return to us for a review of the plan before you, but I don't think the board said before you install anything. And so the applicant returned with photographs of the installed landscape plan that hadn't got any chance to get reviewed. So what do we do in that case?
In that case, staff could address it and they can open up an enforcement case if it's deemed warranted.
So, in assuming, the two big items that most applicants are in front of us for are for concept design approval, which triggers an appeal process, which I generally try to explain to everyone. That's an appeal that goes directly to the city council. And the one is the final approval, which is also a 10-day appealable process. And that's typically what that's why they're here. They're trying to get those approvals. So if this board sees something that doesn't set right, or they have a question, and we've only done this once and we just did it recently, we basically said we're not moving until we get somebody come to tell us what's going on here, because of comments made by the neighbors, so forth and so on. Is that in our purview? Can we do that if we're not comfortable with what we're seeing?
Only if, as it relates to design, you shouldn't consider the enforcement case or anything like that. If there's an issue, someone from my office would be here to address it, but otherwise we know when they're coming through and just address the design and aesthetics issues as you normally would.
I think what I hear saying, it kind of clarifies for me, is that if they come here and they've already done it and it's not been permitted, we look at it as if it's a proposal, even when it's already done.
Correct.
So we can't treat it like it's already done. We treat it like it's a proposal, even though it has been already done. So I think that's the approach we should take.
Okay. So we had an appeal some time ago where the original drawings weren't followed.
Right.
They put in something else. This board said, no, we don't. We want you to put back what was approved.
That's true.
They said, no, we don't. We want what we want. And so they appealed our decision to the city council.
I think I can address that now.
So now that I've described that, what is your read?
I think the board, we start feeling bad because we understand, like, there's this situation where there's clients, and we had another project prior to that where these new owners bought the house unknowing that had it happened. And so we're starting to feel guilty because we're feeling like we're in this position of, putting these people in hardship. And I think maybe there needs to be a clarification that it puts us in a very awkward position when they come forward, especially if they're new owners. They don't know the situation, and then suddenly they're confronted with, well, you didn't follow the guidelines, and now they're coming back. Now, that particular case, they were trying to, buck the system. And again, for us, I have to, and I know that project, and I thought about it, and aesthetically, it was fine. I mean, we looked at it.
Yeah, so we're not agendized for much of a topic. This is if it's a broader topic, once more
sorry, I won't say
discussion.
anymore.
No, it's, but I did want to make sure that you understood. So when the projects come forward with the ENF enforcement numbers, that just look at the project for your aesthetics and within your purview, and our office and staff will take care of the enforcement case, and we're watching them as they come through to make sure that the process is being followed.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming. I think that was very helpful to hear because the board's been struggling. Okay, let's get back to your project. I think we already understood what the enforcement case is when you came in the first time. So do we have comments from our last meeting?
Yes, we do.
Mr. Miller?
The board finds the proposed quality. Now, did you change the architecture? Okay. So these may not be relevant.
Well, these are from October 1st. So what did we say in October 1st?
The board finds the proposed quality and design of the architecture is acceptable. However, the board cannot support the proposed style of the location and neighborhood. So I think you changed that. Number 2, restudy a more appropriate style of the architecture that fits better with the existing neighborhood and considering the unique and historic characteristics of the area and community. Number 3, provide a site section noting distances to address potential privacy issues of adjacent homes and provide photographs of the general style of existing homes in the neighborhood. Number 4, provide and address the Tier 3 stormwater management program requirements and concerns, particularly for the south corner of the property. Action taken by Miller, seconded by Farrell. Motion was carried. Motisha was absent.
Okay, thank you. So if you could share with us what you've done to this point now.
So addressing the first two comments had to do with the style of the building. We came in with a very ultra-modern building.
Yeah.
It had a flat built-up roof, some wood siding, and stucco blend. So we've decided to change that per your suggestion, and we went with a more traditional mission style home. And the reason we chose a mission style,
Oh, yeah. This is what they originally...
Okay, okay.
yeah, so if you look, the floor plans didn't change, but the exterior, I've added the tile roof. And there is still some built-up roof, but maybe a third of the, or two-thirds of the house is now slope tile roof. All stucco, and then some, incorporating some stonework that matches the style and color of the site stonework. And I did a little bit of homework. I went through the guidelines, and just real quickly, I want to mention I did, as the comment suggested, go take a look at the neighborhood. I took some pictures. I think they're on the third page. And what I did discover is there really isn't a distinctive style in that neighborhood. And your guidelines actually address that issue. Neighborhoods without distinctive architecture should be designed to lead the neighborhood toward designs that are harmonious with the Santa Barbara distinctive built environment. So I thought, the mission style would be the appropriate style in that situation, in our situation. So then that takes care of the first two items. And then the third comment had to do with privacy issues with the neighbor to the west, which on sheet 805, that would be what I identify as lot 31. And my site pictures on the next page, if you take a look at photo number 5 and 6, 5 is on the ground. If you go back to the previous page, right in front of the existing retaining wall, looking towards the neighbor's house. And then 6, I actually climbed up on the retaining wall and took a picture in the same direction. And
So just to orient, that tree
yeah,
is that tree. That tree, correct?
Yes, that would be,
This one,
yes.
that tree, okay.
So the house you can see is off down below towards the left of that tree.
So that's the house
Yes.
in lot 31,
Mhm.
okay?
And this is I climbed across the neighbor's property towards their driveway to take this picture. And it's a Tuscan style, attractive house. It's going to have, our house will have a similar tile colored roof, and we're going to pick up on the stone work as well. So I think it would be complementary to that house. But then if you go to the last page, to study or to help look at the privacy issue or concerns, I have those two pictures again here with the close-up. And then the site section is looking towards the front of the house, and it's conceptual, but that house is about 200 feet away and 50 feet lower. So we're going to be viewing clipping the top of the roof, looking at their house. And plus, if you'll notice, their driveway is facing our property, their front door is facing our property, their private spaces are on the other side of their house. So they did a nice job on probably anticipating somebody up higher, and we won't be looking down directly into their private space, and also our view is out in that direction too. So there's some, that's the balance between making use of our view and their privacy. But I think, because of the distance and the drop, it's not as big of a concern. And one more item regarding a privacy issue in the guidelines. We talk about, under the landscaping guidelines, an appropriate way that should be considered to help create privacy between neighbors is the use of shrubs and hedges. And I think we have the opportunity to do that along the property line. And the final item regarding the Tier 3, I've added a note on the site plan saying we would address any Tier 3 comments. And that's the end of my presentation. I think Kevin,
anything you need to say?
Sure. Thank you. So, sitting on this side of the table definitely, can be interesting and definitely have its challenges. And I know I'm sitting across from some architects, so I know that you definitely have that experience. We came in here for our first meeting, and we'd never met, the 7 members of the board. We don't know your tastes, your preferences. We were coming in with what we thought at that point in time was a great-looking home. One of the main reasons we purchased the property was it was an eclectic neighborhood. So we thought, here's this chance that I've always been wanting to do a modern home, so let's do that. Obviously, it didn't really go that way in the first meeting, but just to give you a really quick background on me so you know who you're working with, I graduated from Cal Poly, earned a degree in finance and real estate. With that degree, I own a wealth management company, an insurance agency, a real estate brokerage, and a property development company. I'm not trying to brag, I just want to let you know what I do. I have hundreds of clients that depend on me, trust their retirement, their estates, their legacies. I've renovated over 150, built and renovated over 150 units of real estate, and I'm really looking forward to building this project. We now know after that first meeting, we're trying to decipher the code of Raised from the Earth, that we felt like Santa Barbara, Tuscan, Mediterranean style was going to fit that mold. But we weren't mind readers. We didn't know that coming in here. We're trying to provide a win-win, something that we can get behind, that we can build a high-quality home that someone's going to want, and something that the city can get behind. The current market conditions I saw where people were leaning towards the modern, towards the farmhouse. That's one of the reasons we came in with that. We were going to make this an amazing Santa Barbara style house. We're agreeing with the board to do that style. I'm very happy with what Larry came up with the second time around, and I'm really hoping for conceptual approval tonight, and we can keep moving forward with our property.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Okay. Before we go to questions and comments from the board, we do have one public speaker, Lorna Moore, has 2 minutes to address the board. And David, did we get any written correspondence?
No written correspondence.
You'll come forward, please. And sit in that chair. And if you'll just speak into the microphone and identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is Lorna Moore, and I live at 2108 Las Canoas Road. I'm shown in our property shown in these pictures. We had to do story polls when we did our place. I wish I could have made enough copies, but I was in a hurry, so I could only get 4 out of my printer before I had to leave. But there's, I just, my issue is aesthetics, number one, way above everything else, but also the privacy. And so it's really hard for my husband and I to look at this plan and really see what kind of view they're going to have of our place. And they thought that, the architect thought that our private space was on the other side. It's actually not.
Are you talking about Lot 31?
Are you, this house is under construction?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We
Gotcha.
have
Okay.
this guest house. And,
All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's
and
your
that's
home.
our main house.
Okay.
And this here, I don't know if you're able to, see if I'm supposed to do this on this one so that. This actually is our private space. That's our master bathroom, and that's what we were worried about the last time we showed up for this in October. We've grown some hedges just to actually block from the view of the house that shares our driveway, but with a house up high, I think they're going to be looking straight down into it, and so I'd really like to see some story poles and really
let me-
figure out what's
Let
going to
me-
happen.
Let me look at this. So if that's a 6-foot-high person, and they're going to look straight down into your house, that's the line of sight. Okay? They're looking over the top of the roof. Okay? The one place they might be able to look down into here is if 6-foot scale of this guy? 16th.
8th inch, 16th inch.
16th inch. Whoops. There.
This is what it's talking about right there. That's our master bathroom.
Yeah, if you're 6 feet, you're roughly right there. You have to be right at the property line to look down here 120 feet away.
Well, it's not the distance so much. It's the angle, and I think they're going to be looking straight down
Yeah,
into
if they
our.
stand at the edge of the property, but if they're back
Yeah.
here, what this demonstrates is they can't see this house.
Okay,
Okay.
I hope so. There's no story pole recommendation
We'll
here?
have that conversation.
Okay, because
We'll
we
have
would
that conversation.
really feel better about it if there was. And
Okay.
I'd also like to say that we went through incredible expense to build this. I wish you guys would go up there. It's a really
We
very
have been up
special-
there, ma'am. We understand
Yeah.
how much money is being spent, okay?
So yeah,
Thank you.
we just
Okay,
would like to
understand.
have the house next door
Okay, thank you.
do the same. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else in the audience? Okay, let's bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions? Yes.
Can you show us on that plan there where along the property line your hedge will be in order to both assure the neighbor of privacy and to illuminate for us where that is and if you know what the hedge material is going to be?
Answer your second question first. We haven't gotten into the
I don't see any hedge
design
drawn.
yet. No, we haven't.
There, I don't know, where do you see a hedge? There, I don't think
They said they
No,
were,
I
he was
mentioned
describing
that
that he
was
was
an op-
talking hedge, but we don't have a landscape plan yet.
No, but which property line can you show
Oh, I'm
us?
sorry.
Is it the one adjoining their property? So
It's here.
when you do
Correct.
plant your hedge, that will
Help.
increase the
Help screen.
ability to screen the properties.
Ma'am, excuse me. This is a public meeting, okay? You've had your opportunity to speak, okay? The public comment is now closed, and we're back to our conversation at the board. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, so we just will be interested to see where that is and what the plant material.
I have a question.
Yes.
This is weird. Is this like an access to the other property? Is that an easement or?
No, that's just the driveway up, and then it just stops here.
Well, there's technically a hammerhead turnaround for the fire department. So
Right
that's
there.
the reason for that little.
It's just not really developed yet. That's sort of kind
Right.
of a rendering. Okay.
All right, other questions? If not, let's go to comments. Who has comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. I hadn't seen it before. New to me. And your property is 3 acres?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, this is a question for the board, and I'm open for this reason I'm bringing this subject up. Why are we so I don't want to use adamant. Why did we change the style? If
He read it in the thing. He read the thing.
What's that?
He read it out of the guidelines.
No.
Why did we felt that the,
I know it's in the, I know, but hold a minute.
you want me to answer or no?
Well, let me finish a comment before
Okay.
you. Yeah, I want to hear your comment, your response. We've done this several times of changing styles, drastic styles of houses that were, on 100 or 60 or 200-foot lots that are right next to each other, and everybody's looking down on the property, and neighborhood compatibility didn't fit the neighborhood, put a modern house in a, we've changed things like that. But how can the board decide that a property on 3 acres, and I understand you've changed your design and you like your design, but this is a question to the board, not to you. I know what you've done, and you like what you've done. How can the board decide that a piece of property that's 3 acres, that basically you look at one house, and then you look at another house, and you look at another house, and you look at a modern house, and you look at a Spanish house, and this happens even closer, where it's 200 or 300 foot frontage on a lot, where the houses are completely different. All over the Riviera, we've got houses that are all different. All over the backside of the Riviera, we've got. I just drove up there.
That
I drove
comment,
up
the
there
design
today, and I
thing you
saw
quoted.
colonial houses sitting right next to modern houses across the street from Spanish houses, and I know that they were designed before this board was built, or before this board was created. But
That's the page.
one of the reasons I got on this board because I'm from Santa Barbara and I own property in this town, and I would like to do what you just described, what you would like to do in this town. And I graduated from Cal Poly too. And I was born in this town.
Boy, you better be careful,
I know I'm being very careful.
because I'm ready to comment, and you're
Okay,
getting me
that's
pissed
what I
off.
want. That's what I want.
Guys, hold on. Okay, I think
I
think we got the gist of what you were here.
Okay, go ahead.
You weren't present at this thing, so
I
you
was
want to hear
not.
what we decided,
I wish I was.
okay? So I believe, and anyone that remembers, jump in. We had gone out and looked at this neighborhood. I went out and walked this road, okay? Walked up the road and walked back down the road. And like you, have lived here a long time, know the area very well. And I believe that what we saw presented to us the first time was not compatible with the neighborhood. Our job, the reason this board exists, and the council looks to us, is to determine whether or not the homes that we're looking at, one at a time, are compatible with the neighborhood in general. Now, that's not to say that a contemporary home doesn't work in a neighborhood that leans to more traditional homes, but given I think what the board felt with this particular project, given that canyon, given the way that canyon was developed over time, and including the house that's being built right now, that traditional shapes and forms were much more acceptable. We didn't tell them to come back with a Spanish-style roof or a Spanish-style house. We just felt that what they had presented the first time wasn't compatible. So we said, go take a look at it and come back. Now, we've seen other applicants come back and say, we disagree, we want this, and this is what we want, you need to approve it. These folks chose to listen to us and say, well, okay, we'll take a second look. We still can find something that we think is going to work for us, we'll come back, and that's what they've done. So that's kind of how we got here. Now, at the same point, we have a lot of folks that have spent a lot of money buying houses in this neighborhood on large acreage, and everyone feels like if they've spent that kind of money, they're entitled to a whole lot of things. Our challenge is to determine how much entitlement is due everybody. You know, are we here sitting in judgment about allowing homes that can be built where they can't see anybody whatsoever, whenever, you know, in any circumstance whatsoever? I think the city attorney's office has advised us on several occasions that we can't guarantee privacy. We certainly want to take that into account. And I think this board on many occasions has bent over backwards to make sure we didn't have windows looking into windows, and we didn't have, you know, we've taken a lot of care to try to deal with that, particularly when it comes to where we've got houses really close to each other, 20 feet away or 16 feet away. We've also looked at homes that are 200 feet away, 1,000 feet away. What can you see from right here looking up into the Riviera? What can you see across a canyon? So at the end of the day, it's our obligation to make a judgment call. Now, do we always make the right decision? Maybe not. Do we always make a decision that City Council will agree? Maybe not. And that's why there's an appeal period. And that's why, at least the way it's set up now, our decisions aren't appealable to the Planning Commission. They're appealed directly to the City Council. And we have one coming that we were informed about earlier where we said we didn't feel it was appropriate to have a certain element of that house on that particular side of the house. And the applicant said, I want what I want, and I'm going to appeal it. I don't like your decision. So anybody can do that.
So I have to make a few comments. First off, I don't appreciate how you question our judgment. I mean, you're perfectly entitled to say how you feel. But when you start saying, well, I don't understand why the board is saying such and such, because now you put me in a defensive reason. And this is what I have to say. So Santa Barbara has a legacy and a heritage, unlike most American cities.
Let's back up.
Yeah. And because of that, and if you understand and study the history of why these review boards are here, bless her heart, Pearl Chase, you know, there was a reason why we were here, and it wasn't to study neighborhood compatibility. It was actually to try to encourage architects, designers to build in the Mediterranean style. That was the mission back in the 1920s. In those days, architects' attitude was very different than it is now. And so we're struggling with that now, as Fred says. And that's the unique heritage of this city. I live in Lompoc. I grew up in Santa Maria. I know what it's like to live in a city that doesn't have architectural character. Not only that, I know what it's like to live in a city where the developers, bankers take control of any kind of development decisions, and the citizens have no control or have any say on how the city is developed. And that's why I find it particularly exciting about this community is the fact that it notifies its neighbors that you can come here and say, I spent a small fortune on my property and I played by the rules, and I expect people around me to play by the rules too. That actually gives community citizens an active say in their community development. And we have, you know, and it says here, compatible with architectural character of the city and neighborhood is the design of the project compatible with the desirable architectural qualities and characteristics which are distinctive of Santa Barbara. So we have a distinctive look here. And this architect, I think, brilliantly approached that. He read this where it says, if it does not possess the examples of distinctive architecture, should be designed to lead the neighborhood towards designs that are harmonious with the Santa Barbara's distinctive built environment. And I find it interesting that so many architects in this community fight this, they resist it, they demean it, they ridicule it, and I said, well, fine, then don't live here, live in Oxnard, live in San Clemente, you know, or Santa Maria. I mean, these are communities that do not have architectural review boards, and you can see the kind of quality of what those communities possess. And that's why I come from, and in this particular case, I'm always coming from that. It's not that this is better than modern. Your modern house was beautiful. It's just not the theme of the music we're playing here right now. And that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you. Okay, other comments? Let's go to the comments specifically to this project, okay? I think we kind of
back there.
Yeah, okay. That's okay. We're addressing time here. So let me go to comments on my part. First of all, the privacy issue. I want to go to this component here. I think that as I said, I've walked the the site, but only on the public right-of-ways. We're not allowed to go on people's properties. But I'm of the opinion that all of these homes are far enough separated that unless you really have somebody that wants to look into your bathroom window, you're not going to have that case in anywhere in this canyon. And yes, with a little additional landscaping, I think that, we're 200 feet away. I think this line of sight really demonstrates nobody from this house can see that house and barely see the roof. One of the things we always have to be careful about is photographs, close-ups, et cetera, can be deceiving. So you kind of have to make your judgment on what you've seen out on the site physically versus photographs. But I think I can safely be assured that there isn't going to be a privacy issue. With regards to story poles, yes, are certainly used by this board from time to time, but the board understands that requiring story poles is a very expensive proposition. They have to be done by a certified civil engineer. There's sets of drawings that have to be filed. There's inspections going on. There are 3 different levels of story poles, as you recall, that we can choose from. But I would like to hear my fellow board members weigh in. I don't believe story poles are necessary for this application. I think that the architect has and the owner has done an amiable job of listening to us about architecture that can be certainly compatible with the neighborhood. And again, as we go through this process, the definition of neighborhood should be addressed. The home still has a contemporary element to it. So I'm satisfied that the architect has addressed our concerns, that the applicant has addressed our concerns. There are 2 things, though, that, there's one technical question I need to ask David. David, this has been presented to us today as we're not able to make any final appealable decision. Is that still correct?
That is correct, but since the time the agenda was published, I did have more of an opportunity to review the environmental assessment. It is okay for project design approval, but because it was not agenda as such, we can't grant that approval. But I would recommend that if the board feels that the project is approvable, that they can make that recommendation in their motion, and therefore when the project comes back, this board can be ready to take that action.
Okay, and the board also has the ability to send this to consent calendar.
That is correct.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, two comments that on the ability to give you any kind of approval today. Technically, David just said we can't, so that's a concern, because obviously you would like to achieve that today. But if the board is of the inclination to accept this, what's been presented as an acceptable design, we have the option to send it to consent calendar, which is the 2 people reviewing every Monday at 11 o'clock. And currently I and myself and Lisa are the 2 reviewers. That could go to consent calendar. However, I'm concerned even at this point, we don't have a landscape plan, so we can't see where the hedge is or the extent of the hedge is. We don't have Tier 3, which aesthetically, that's things we're required to look at Tier 3 or Tier 2, whatever is required. And we have to make decisions on paving material aesthetically appropriate, not. So we don't see any of that now. So that's why the Tier 3 is kind of important. Also, Tier 3 typically will contain strategies for holding the water on the site. So that might be a water garden, that might be a rock system, et cetera. So we don't have that to look at this point. And typically, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, but typically we don't give project design approval until we at least see the outline of that approach and certainly landscaping. So myself, I would be kind of uncomfortable at this point, even moving this to consent for project design approval, because we don't have a landscape plan yet and a paving plan to show how they're going to do the driveway and all that stuff. I don't know. I'm looking at you guys to.
Mr. Chair, yes. Typically, with project design approval, we want to see at least a conceptual landscape plan. It
Right,
doesn't have
right.
to be the
Final
detailed
thing,
final
but a general
plan.
view.
But yeah.
Yeah, and when you do that, that takes into account how you're going to address Tier 3.
Sure.
Because a lot of Tier 3 is handled through how you're going to landscape. So Lisa, am I off base, or?
No,
I think that's,
I agree.
as our
I
landscape?
do have one question.
Okay, let me get back to you in a moment. Okay, let's go to other comments. Yes, John.
I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe for educational purposes, how does a 5,403 square foot house equal 89% of a 132,000 square foot property?
Yeah.
And that makes no sense to me whatsoever.
It's because of the way it's an automatically formulation that's on the city's website.
Yeah.
So you put in all those numbers, you do all the required thing, and it spits that out. So it's not a direct ratio. When they say floor area ratio,
Yeah.
it's a very complicated formula. It's not a simple ratio formula, which I figured out a long time ago. So what happens when we get large projects or large acreage projects?
Yes.
What tends to happen is that the FAR stays relatively low through the whole process. You have to get to a really big house to get that number up to 100% or 102 or whatever. When you're on small sites, 15,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet or 8,000 square feet, you only do a little bit, and all of a sudden you're into a big FAR, because it's a ratio study of the size of the lot to the floor ratio of the house, or the floor area of the house. So when you have a small lot and you have a reasonably sized house, a 2,000-3,000 square foot house, the minute you add another 50 square feet or 100 square feet, all of a sudden you see the FAR just skyrocket.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Where on a big site like this, it takes a whole lot to get that number to move up. That's why it looks weird.
I think what Jonathan asked, and the same thing I always asked, is, again, how can you have a same size house, 5,000 square foot house on a small lot, and get the same figure that you have the same size house on a 3 acre and get the same figure?
Yeah. And
It doesn't make any sense to me.
What I've
Never
done,
made any
and
sense to me.
I haven't pulled it out often, but I did a study, which I keep in my little book here, and I haven't pulled it out lately, and I don't know what I did. I did a study on various size lots, just arbitrarily went into the city site, plugged in the numbers, and ran them out, because sometimes what we get confused about is, well, if he adds 100 square feet or takes off 100 square feet,
I
how
understand.
dramatically-
I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying. I understand what
I
you're
have
saying.
that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
reference.
But it still doesn't make any sense to
I
me.
know, but you have to go through the math.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
So our zoning ordinance does have the FAR calculations spelled out. I'd be happy to go over them individually with Member Ziegler, Member Motisha.
No, I understand. I understand. I've gone through the process and done a couple houses before I retired and didn't have to do any more. But I still don't understand how you can take a same house, the same size square footage, and put it on a 3,000 square or a 10,000 square foot lot, and then all of a sudden put it on a 3 acre lot and come out with a higher ratio on a bigger lot, on a 3 acre lot than you do on a.
That's because it's the math.
It's the math. I wasn't very good at math at Cal Poly.
All right. So I'll tell you a Cal Poly story in a minute, but let's not take any more time.
I didn't go to Cal Poly, but I don't understand it either.
Okay, let's go to more comments. Okay, the chair is going to entertain a motion. If you'd like me to formulate it, I will. And let's see, I did forget one thing. You had a comment. Did you?
I did have
Yes,
one question.
I'm
So
sorry.
we go through the conceptual, the preliminary, and the final approvals for this home.
Yes.
Our intent, and maybe it was landscaping and the stormwater plan in preliminary was developing during that point.
Yeah, well, let me explain.
Okay.
Well, you're trying to get two things to get this house to the building department.
Yes.
Okay? You're trying to get what we call concept or preliminary approval, okay? Which is what we're talking about right now. And typically, that needs to include the preliminary landscape plan,
Okay.
concept, and the preliminary Tier 3 stormwater. The reason we're concerned on this particular case about the stormwater is in the first hearing, the neighbors were concerned about which way is the water going to flow off this site, and is it going to flood our driveway or whatever. The stormwater, Tier 3 stormwater plan will show how you're going to mitigate that, because there's state laws that require you to hold so much water on the site and all that kind of stuff, okay? So we need to see that plan, because it also affects your landscape plan. So that's why we're reluctant to give you preliminary approval. Now, here's what happens. When we do give you preliminary approval, that's the one point in which it is an appealable decision. So anyone in the community, not just your neighbors, anybody in Santa Barbara, can file an appeal. They have 10 days to do it from the moment we make our decision. That appeal goes directly to the city council. And I can tell you I've been on this board almost 8 years. We've had a few appeals over that 8-year period, and I've only seen now twice, maybe 3 times, where the city council has not agreed with our decision. Most all other times they have, or they send it back to us to work it out with the applicant and the neighbors. So it's not an easy, why I'm sharing that with you, it's not an easy process. And it also costs you money to, or the appellant has to pay money to file for the appeal. So it's a lengthy process. So basically what you are looking for at this point is your preliminary design approval. And then once you have that and you pass the 10 days and there's no appeal, then you can proceed to complete your final working drawings. That comes back to this board, either to the full board or to the consent calendar. And at that point, we have to look at these drawings to determine whether or not they look like a final set of drawings that match what we approved the first time, so that the details look like they're going to match what the intent of the architecture is, that the landscape plan, the irrigation is being done properly, that if we decided that we need things to be irrigated just to get them started versus long-term irrigation, all those details all have to be on the drawings, the colors, et cetera, et cetera. At that point, we can give you final approval. That decision is appealable, again, 10 days to the city council. I haven't seen many of those ever appealed because by the time you get that far, most everybody's either gotten a solution or agreed that it's an okay project. So that's kind of what's happening. Once you have that in play for final, then you can go to the building department. But the set of drawings you're submitting that we're looking at are going to get stamped. So that has to be the same set that you file with the building department, because they're going to come back and say, did this board look at it and was it stamped? So that's the process. Okay, so that's kind of where you're going. So I'm going to offer a motion to the floor that says we have reviewed the project. We find that the applicant and designer's latest offering of an architectural style is acceptable, that the board finds that it should be able to find neighborhood compatibility and would recommend that when the board gives it preliminary approval that they define the neighborhood succinctly. That the board did review and take into account the privacy issues that are located within the adjacent property owners and has determined that the project does not present significant privacy issues between the properties and therefore finds no necessity to erect story poles. That the board would like to see a preliminary concept plan for Tier 3 stormwater and would also like to see a preliminary landscaping plan, particularly paying attention to appropriate screening to ensure the privacy issues between properties on the site. That the board, in general, is supportive of the architectural approach, and that the board also recognizes that the floor area ratio at 89% is acceptable given the fact that the lot is 3 acres in size, and find it that the floor area ratio is not out of line for the neighborhood. Let's see. And that we would ask the project to, I think we should return it to the full board. That way we've got the 2 landscape folks can look at it. Return to the full board. So that's my motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there comments to the motion? Discussion of the motion on the floor? Any further comments? David, did we cover everything we needed to?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye with a protest.
Are you voting no?
No.
You can vote no.
You can
No,
vote
I'm not gonna vote no.
Okay.
No, I'm not gonna vote
So, oppose? Abstentions? Okay. Motion's passed. We'll see you when you get back here. Okay? Thank you. Okay. That can go over there. Where are we at?
Us.
Oh, we're at recess, so the board will stay in recess till 10 minutes to, can we do that? No, 5 minutes to the hour.
Start?
Now so go reconvene the meeting.
Okay. Project before us is 837 Alvarado Road. Before we start, let me read what was.
I'm going to read to you.
You're going to read it? Here it is then. Yeah.
The comments from the previous meeting are from 1/22/19 to continue 2 weeks to the full board with comments. The new windows on the addition should be more consistent in style with the existing architecture and windows. And that's it.
That's it. And I need to read Reformed Act of Sole Proprietorship. We have two members. We have two members of the board making a presentation in front of us today. Quote, the State Fair Political Practices Act, FPPC, Regulation 18702.4B5 states that an official may appear before a design or architectural review committee of which he or she is a member to present, explain architectural or engineering drawings which the official has prepared for a client. This is Brian Miller and Fred Sweeney, our architects. They're both sole practitioners and is using this exception, understanding certain limits regarding advocating on behalf of their client. If you'd like to make your presentation.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I am Brian Miller. I am the agent representing this project, and Fred Sweeney is the consulting architect.
Okay. Okay, so yes, I'm the design architect, and Brian is what we would call the executive architect who will be filing for the building permit. So we're in front of you today because we presented the consent calendar, and the consent reviewers felt that our proposal for some glass doors on the bottom floor of this addition perhaps could not be compatible with the rest of the architecture of the house. So let's start by just orienting you. I'm going to use two documents here. One is the plans. So this is up on Arboleda Road. The property actually sits in from the roadway. There is residential property here and residential property there. This is the aerial photograph, may help it. So this is that curve right here. It's Arboleda Road. There's an entry driveway here, which is here. This is the house. It sits overlooking this canyon that drops off the Riviera. So the next closest street is Loma Media here and winds its way. You can get up into this dead-end street up here, and it goes all the way up through here. So the project consists of two additions to the existing home. One is the reconstruction of an open-air entry porch to an enclosed glass gallery entryway, and the addition of a one-story dining room area and a second floor sitting room off the master bedroom, which sits right here. And then there's some small minor additions out in the yard for an outdoor gas-fired fireplace and a place for a gas-fired barbecue and a little counter for food prep. So just to go quickly through the plan, this is the existing lower level of the house. This piece of the house was constructed, we think, back in the 20s or 30s. It was a stone masonry structure, probably 2 floors, relatively small. In 1981, it was added onto in this area here, and we'll show you that on the upper level. The porch we're talking about is here. The first level dining room is here, replicating the exterior stonework. Here, area for dining room, doors that open out onto the patio areas, existing patio wall, steps. We like to add an outdoor gas-fired fireplace, the barbecue, and a little counter area for food prep. On the second level is the addition of, above the dining room, is the little sleeping porch or sitting room off their master bedroom. The original home was this size here with a Monterey style balcony off the front side, which is facing, that's to the ocean side. The hillside is here, garage, and then outdoor areas here. We didn't show there's a upper level above this, which is a couple of bedrooms and a bath up here that's not being touched. We don't have that on the set of drawings. It's in the existing drawings. So here is the rendering of the entry, redo of the entry porch, which is covered right now. And let's see if I've got photographs. Do you have the...
David, do you have pictures?
The other picture doesn't have all the pictures here. Thank you. So, yeah, essentially it's this porch right here. We're going to enclose that and extend it out a few feet just beyond the front wall. So that's what this is, with a new door, a new readjusted roof over the porch. Let's see, do I have, what else we got? I think that's the main one for the front part of the house. This is actually the entrance off of Arboleda Road. That's the driveway coming back in. Okay, and this is the overall view of the house from the Arboleda Road side of the home. Let me just go through. So this is the side of that porch, glass enclosed. A new window here, that's existing wall. This is existing roof, existing fireplace, existing upper floors, existing here. This is the new addition off the sitting room, sleeping porch off the backside. Here's the sections, elevations, floor heights to plate heights. Everything's relatively low. It's interesting that historically this house was built as this rock structure. So the finished floor at the second floor is only 8'6". So the ceiling in the dining room is going to be like at 7'2". Wow. Because that's just the whole way the whole house was built. And so then when the additions were done later on, again, all the plate heights are really low. So this is 6'6". Here, it'll be a little bit higher just because we're trying to get it to snug into the existing roof. And I have a roof plan. We have a roof plan up here. This corner, whoops, where is it? That one there? There it is. So here is this addition where the dining room and sleeping porch are up on the second floor. So we're snugging into the existing roof here, and this is this flat roof over where the porch is now. The roof on the porch right now slopes a little bit, but it's like an inch to a foot slope. And we're going to flatten that out a little bit more. Okay, so that's that. So let me show you then elevations. So we forgot to get just stay here. So this is what we presented to the consent board. These are little portions of what they look like colored. For some reason, we can't find the color drawing. But this is the sleeping porch or sitting room off the master bedroom. So this roof just leads right into the existing roof. This is that lower level. And this drawing depicts, as this drawing off both sides, depicts a steel door system, which is very similar to, and this is right off of their catalog, that system right there. Okay, so that's basically this door system here. And I think we got another, that's just the colors. Anyway, similar to that. That's the idea of doing that. And so, in essence, that's filling up this corner. So this addition kind of sits in here, fills in that corner.
The entry is in the back
And the
of that
entry's
corner.
in the back on the other side. Okay. And let's see what else do I need to show you. I think that's it.
So it's going right in this corner right here.
Yeah, it's right in there. It's filling that corner up.
Two-story right
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So it's filling in this corner. Okay. So what we have here is a fairly eclectic piece of architecture that's been added to over several periods of times at different points. The addition up here was done by Sharp, Mahan, and Lenny back in '81. We think a lot of the other work was done hither and yon over the years. There's an interior staircase that actually has to get a permit that was put in by the current owner, but several years ago without a permit. So there's this interior staircase that has to go in that's very contemporary in look. So you can forensically just go through and see where things have been added and patched in and changed over time. So that's what we wanted to get approved. And consent said, no, it really isn't compatible with the rest of the architecture. But what I'd like to share with you is some additional examples of how people treat different periods of architecture in the same building. So here's an example of using very traditional fenestration elements, but in a very different way. So that's not a very traditional approach to the rest of the house, which looks fairly traditional. Here's another one where this is an old barn structure, stone structure with traditional window fenestrations here, but then an element that's been introduced that's contemporary right next to it. This is another case where a relatively contemporary solution for their sun porch, glassed-in sun porch compared to the stage here. And these are just other examples of not true takeoffs on the components, the architectural language that's been introduced as part of the solution. So we did go off and did study. We did study a more traditional approach to these sets of glass doors. And that looks, why are these stapled? I'm doing this upside down. So used to know, that's fine.
I need to see.
I'm on,
You guys want to see these?
So here is that drawing in color. And then here's a more traditional application of traditional French doors, 5-light French doors, clad, that would be used in lieu of wherever that other picture
A
was.
giant steel window that you.
Yeah, the steel windows, yeah. In lieu of that. The other drawing, the other thing we want to show you is, is what this looks like across from the canyon. So this is a sketch done right off of the canyon look. So here is, at one point up in Loma Media, there is a pop-out that you can look back at this property, which is hidden behind these oak trees right here. So it's back right in there. So you can't see it. This is the property above. This is the neighbor actually showed up at consent calendar because she was concerned about how high this addition was going to be. This is a little bit further, in a way I could wedge myself in to see again the site, but it's that right there. That's the edge of the site. I'm higher on Loma Media. And then lower in Loma Media, you can see it at the turn that we showed in the photograph.
over this house.
Yeah, where are we?
You're looking north, yeah.
Right here. That house is this house. That's it. So if you park right here, you can take a photograph. That's what this photograph is, looking straight up. And then, of course, using the telephoto lens, I can get a little closer, and that's what this is, a tracing on top of that drawing showing the addition. So this depicts the steel-clad window system and the wood window system on the second floor. So our client really would prefer this, but realizes there is an economic challenge to making that decision. We haven't been able to get a final price from the estimate from the steel guide, but we venture to say it's double the cost of the traditional French doors, which, just for your general knowledge, French doors clad, typical 6'8" by 6'0", pair of 3.0s, run $4,800 just to buy the doors to start with. That's not installing them, whatever. So, you know, this is an expensive proposition. The client would like to use these, but understands if it's not affordable, that she would fall back to this pair of doors. But we'd like the option to do either one of them. We don't think they have an impact, certainly on the neighborhood. They can't be seen from the public right off of Avalado. The house can't be seen at all. As it demonstrated, it can be seen from a few points across the canyon at 1,000 feet away at Loma Media. And we believe that this is a unique approach, and the guidelines, if you read carefully, say the board needs to consider it, but as I've said many, many times, they're only guidelines. The board has the wherewithal to interpret and make their own decision. So that's our presentation.
Okay, the reason the consent calendar, Lisa and I brought it back here, is because for basically two reasons. One, the windows that are proposed here are basically horizontal. I mean, they don't look horizontal. They have been changed. In their presentation consent, they were horizontal, and every other window, these other windows were vertical windows, broken up vertical windows. Now, it has been changed to, yeah, sorry, you beat me to it. I was going to comment about that. And the other reason is the fact that all these are wood windows here, and what was taken out to add this whole this two-story element here, there was, I think, 3 windows taken out that were steel windows, and which were put in at a later design of the eclectic way the house was designed later on. And these are steel windows. They're coming out. This is
The salvage wood window.
That's a wood window below.
From the original house.
So the two reasons: one, the windows were presented horizontally with vertical windows, and they were presented steel case windows, which didn't fit the, what we say is the design of the house, to fit the, aesthetically look of what the house is. And we didn't make a decision. We just decided to bring it back to the board and let the board make a decision of whether, because the house is located in a canyon that basically nobody can see, and looking at 2 sets of windows that really throw out a lot of light, that our guidelines say don't light up the whole night with windows, and what we're doing here is lighting up that whole. That's what you look up. You look up at that from Arbolito Road, and from the lower house down below. You look right up at that house, shining right out into that canyon, that looking south. That's the south elevation. Questions? Before I go very far, are there any comments from the neighborhood, from the audience? Nobody? Okay. Any questions from the board?
I have a question. So what is this siding on this side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shiplap siding.
Okay. So the rest of it is stucco up on that level, and then
It's stone along the whole bottom.
bottom.
Top is stucco, and this addition is the wood.
And it's still, okay, go ahead.
No, that was my question. I just was asking about that.
Jonathan?
I had a question. Maybe I misunderstood, but is the addition going to have stone wall interior walls?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, what's happening is, if you look at, see this stone wall?
Yes.
What we're going to do is we're just going to take out this window and take the floor down. That'll be the opening to the kitchen. So that opens into the dining room. And then this wall becomes the back wall of the dining room. So we're retaining all the stone features because this first floor over on this side of the house is all stone. But it's been treated very contemporarily on the inside.
Okay. Another question is, maybe you don't know this, but are there any code violations about having very low ceiling heights?
No, you can be 7'6".
Okay, and this is lower than that, right? I thought you said 6'6".
7'2". So I don't think so, given this existing condition. We'll find out when we get the building
Okay.
department, but I don't
All right.
think it's an issue.
I think it has to be 7'6". Habitable space.
Habitable space.
And then this is a comment, not a question.
I think a kitchen and a bathroom can be lower to
Yes.
7'2", but I think habitable bedrooms, living rooms, anything like that has to be 7'6".
Okay, all right,
We have to check that when we get there.
all right.
We have a 2-inch problem.
And the only other thing I would say is your conclusion on steel windows makes sense. I put them in my house and they came out to $200 a square foot, just the steel windows alone. And I think the French door concept with the wood looks a lot more appropriate in this, what you're trying to do. And would be less money for your client.
We on the comments?
I have one other comment. I made a comment, or sorry, I made a question again. This height here, and you said that was measured and is drawn correctly. Your picture does not show. Your picture shows that this right here is taller than the window.
I
And
did
it's,
it based on the drawings we had from Mahan Sharp.
yeah. Okay. And what you end up here is vertical here, which are vertical, and you have got horizontal here. It's questionable. I question my own comment. No, they're vertical. They look vertical here. This is, see, by the time you make this window, the size this window is, this is much wider and much wider. You're going to end up with even less here.
Are you changing that window?
we're not
That's
touching
that's
it.
existing and it's
Exactly.
already there.
He's just
Okay.
commenting on my drafting ability.
Yeah.
I see.
He's actually commenting on mine.
I just traced it right off the drawings.
I brought it back to the full board to get your comments and your questions on the windows, make of the windows, and the horizontal or vertical
I have a
position of the
comment.
windows. Yes, sorry.
I appreciate
Comments, no.
that you went and studied another approach like we asked you to, and I have to agree that I feel more comfortable that the wood French doors are more integral with the rest of the house, and that the difference with the shiplap and the steel window on the top doesn't look as obtrusive when the bottom story is matching the existing. So, in that, I'm having a mental block. In order to save money, it would be kind to the client to go with the wood frame doors.
Any other comment?
Okay, I understand what the board members are saying, but I also see the point that if this is hidden in a canyon, it's not going to be, people are not going to be seeing this little addition. And so if that is something that the owner of this home really wants, that kind of a door system that open so you can open up that whole doorway area and go out to your patio, I don't have any objection to it.
I'd like to see a glass garage door on this house.
I don't think they're changing the garage door. That's not it.
Just kidding. Sounds good.
In one of these pictures. Yep, there it is.
Well, you'd balance glass on both sides. If you had it on the right and the left, it would be a very symmetrical fit.
Wait, but you're not changing the garage.
No, we're not proposing the garage, no work on the garage at all.
Okay.
Okay, are we going to
I think we should make a motion. Let me make a comment. I do like this better than, this is, to me, really, and that's what's the one that stands out right there, those horizontal and that steel. I think this is an improvement, a great improvement on the windows that match the other windows of the house, the rest of the windows, or the doors, not the windows, the doors. And it's not as strong as this, meaning it doesn't really clash with the rest of the house. Yeah, ask for somebody want to make a proposal and
Motion?
motion, yeah. Make a motion.
I'll make a motion. The board would, let's see,
We're requesting project design.
But the board would like to give this project design approval with the following comments: that we accept the entry porch, the one-story dining, and the second-story sitting room.
It went down. It went down.
And the outdoor kitchen. There's a preference towards the wood doors, but being that the canyon is secluded and you can't see the house from the road, if the client can afford the steel, then that is their prerogative. And we appreciate your extended study. That is my motion.
Have a second?
Wait,
Board
I
Member
think we have to
James?
do NPO findings.
Yeah, can we make the NPO
Yes,
findings, hillside findings, and slope lot findings?
Yes, I'd like to note that the neighborhood preservation findings have been met, that the project uses quality architecture and materials, is consistent with the style and appearance of other homes in the area, is compatible with the existing neighborhood, and follows the Good Neighbor guidelines. And it is in the Hillside District, and we find that none of the natural topography is being disturbed, and that the scale of the building is appropriate. And was Tier 3? What was the third one you asked me?
Oh, just slope lot findings.
Where is that on here?
It should just read right below the hillside section.
Grading findings, vegetation findings. This project does not negatively affect any sloping lots.
And are we continuing this to the full board or back to consent?
And we'd like to continue this on to the consent calendar for final.
Okay, second.
Okay. Motion is made, it's been seconded. I'll ask for a vote.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed? Any extensions?
No opposition, no extensions, so motion passes.
Passes.
This project has a 10-day appeal period.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you may,
Just one note, since we can use this as a good exercise when this goes through. We are not allowed, Brian and I are not allowed to advocate in any extraordinary way in front of this board. That's why this law exists. So ordinarily, if I were representing this client and I weren't on this board, you would have seen me doing a whole lot more discussion. But one has to be very careful about what you say, and as you all know, I was taken in front of the FPP for that kind of accusation. So that's why it's important it's read into the record of what we're doing. So, but hopefully that won't happen too many times.
Well, we all know you're very wordy, so.
I only do things that a friend asked me to do. Other than that, I don't like to do extra work. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
You need to adjourn the meeting.
yeah, I adjourn the meeting.
You got to get rid of